Good evening. It's 7:01 p.m. Monday evening. This is a regular session of City Council. I'm Jeff Reisner, President Pro Tem. President of Council Sam Crowell is out of town, so I'm taking his place. The first thing we have to do is we're going to have a public hearing on the Community Development Block Grants, the CDBG program. And the purpose of the public hearing is to hear what the public has to say about these block grants. So if anyone would care to comment on the CDBG program, go to the dais and sign in. I think there's a sign-in sheet, and have your speak. So it's open. Yes?
I'm guessing most people don't know what that is, so it might be helpful if the mayor just spends a minute explaining what that is.
You heard the lady?
It's important.
The council member, yes. So this is a grant that we are eligible for, and it comes in 2-year increments. It's $75,000 a year, or you can hold off a year and for a larger project and use the entire $150,000. They're based on LMI census blocks in the city of Athens. It can be used for a sundry of different things. We have used it for lighting enhancements on Franklin Avenue. I mean, we talked a lot about this at the last meeting, or Washington Avenue rather, I'm sorry. We've done, the city still owns 2 residences that we use for housing here in the city of Athens that the Metropolitan Housing Authority basically manages for us. One that's on Central Avenue and the other is on Richland Avenue next to Fire Station 2. We did a significant improvement in that residence on Richland Avenue to where before it was not ADA accessible, and now it is ADA accessible, or at least I believe that was an early project. But we've used it for a number of things. We've used it for the Kimes Reservoir because it qualifies under that census block to be eligible for the use of this money with repairs to the reservoir. And so at this point, we're looking to see what other projects. Now, I have to qualify, because I've said it a couple times now, that it has to qualify in terms of being an eligible census block. There's a number of areas in the city of Athens that do not qualify for this funding because of the low to moderate income metric that's used for CDBG, Community Development Block Grants. Hopefully that helps.
Does it require matching funds?
It does not. We can use that money. We can bundle it. We can apply city funds to go along with that use of the CDBG funding and do larger projects. We've done that in the past as well, where we'll use CDBG along with budgeted city funds for projects.
Well, now that the public has been informed on what a CDBG block grant is and what it's used for, are there any comments? Going once? Going twice? I'm going to have to qualify something here. If you speak about this block grant, you're going to have to, this is a public hearing, you're going to have to sign. Okay? Now speak.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. I just thought for clarification, since we put in the work to let folks know what the community development block grants that we're discussing are, we could perhaps remind folks of the procedures that will follow for the public hearing in terms of, are we hearing just from audience members first and then members from the council, or any particular order you'd like us to go in?
A public hearing has always been, at least in my experience, is that the public speaks. Council really has nothing to do with it. Okay, we are here just simply to hear what the public wants. That information is then used by the administration to fill out the forms for the grant. I mean, somebody out there may say, well, I have a great idea for a project that $75,000 would cover. Wouldn't that be wonderful? We'll just do this particular project that I have in mind, and the administration would submit the necessary forms, and hopefully it would get funded. That's the purpose. So, anything? Mary, do you have anything?
Not to call you out here.
Okay, then, we'll close the public hearing. It's closed. Be sure to sign before you leave. Now we're going to have a, believe it or not, a Transportation Committee meeting. And I'd hate to break this whole thing up just to have
Could
people
we just
move.
all sit up here?
Okay.
Since the
all those-
treasurer's at our table over there.
Is there a motion to everybody stay up here?
So move.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Take it away, Transportation Committee.
Okay, so the bottom line is, someone discovered that in order to get salt, which we need for our roads, as you know, in the wintertime, often, well, not that often this last year, but in any case, we need to be prepared for anything. You never know about Ohio weather. But in order to meet the participation deadline of May 3rd, to get involved with this, we have to get on it right now. We don't have a meeting the 29th, so we need to take care of this really quickly. So just briefly, it's an ordinance authorizing participation in the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program. We do this every year, and it's obviously important to make sure our roads are safe. So I'll go through a couple of these whereases. Whereas Section 5513.01B provides the opportunity for municipal corporation to participate in contracts of the Ohio Department of Transportation for the purchase of machinery, materials, supplies, and/or other articles. Whereas the City of Athens has authorized funds in the 2024 budget for the purchase of road salt, and thereby submits this written agreement to participate in the Ohio Department of Transportation's ODOT annual winter salt bid in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5513.01B, and thereby agrees to all of the terms and conditions, including this ordinance, in the participation of the ODOT winter road salt contract. And then it, section 1, 2, and 3 basically goes through and explains that we need this salt, and that the director of ODOT signing of the winter road contract, it shall be effective to form a contract, and agrees, the City of Athens agrees to be solely responsible for resolving all claims and disputes arising out of this participation in the ODOT winter salt program. The City of Athens electronic order for sodium chloride road salt will be the amount the City of Athens agrees to purchase from its awarded salt supplier at the delivered bid price per ton awarded by the Department of, and, you know, it's obviously an advantage to try to do this at the state level than trying to figure out something on our own. So that's the wisdom of doing this, and that's why we have to get on this right away. You want to add to that, Mayor?
I think you summed it up very well.
Any comments from the
It's our committee.
committee?
I'll let them go first.
Anybody else?
I'm not on that committee yet.
Okay.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What do we do? Put down salt once, maybe twice this year? I assume the shelf life on this stuff, what we didn't use this year, we can use next year. And the reason I ask this is we're all very well aware we are paying attention not only to our dollars, but now our quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies. Do you have any idea how much we carried over and how much potential savings that will be in the upcoming year?
I will defer to the mayor on that one.
It was a substantial amount that we have still in our salt bins, salt storage down at the service garage. So there will be some savings there because of the stockpile that we currently have. But this will also further allow us for what we do need. And I can get you approximately tonnage that we are estimating that we're going to need moving forward. But, you know, to use this cooperative agreement, it's kind of like the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council. Our electric bills are lower because of this collective purchasing power. And so this allows us to jump in with the state and other entities, and it drives down the cost.
Right. So we're going to try to do this,
No, I just have a question.
okay?
Your question, Member Allen, made me think of this. Is there a minimum that we have to purchase through these agreements? A minimum number of tons of salt that we have to make Otherwise, it's not worth it to the state to sell it to us.
It's a good question, Member Reisner. I'm not sure if there's a minimum, not to my knowledge that there's a minimum when we do go out and purchase this way, but I can also get that information for you. It's a,
Okay.
Okay, so the bottom line is, we need to move on this quickly, and so that's why we're going to go through first reading a little later in the evening, and hopefully by next week, we can have a special session to approve it on an emergency basis. No? I see Law Director Eliason
I
shaking.
don't know that, I think the idea was we were going to suspend the rules
Suspend, yes,
tonight.
yes.
Rather than have a special session. And one thing I just wanted to mention is, this happens every year, that we get this late, and we get it, and it gets on the schedule, and then it has a May 3rd deadline for rescinding the agreement. So this happens to us every year, that we get in this situation. So rather than have it it's adopted after that deadline to rescind, I would prefer that we suspend the rules and just take care of it today.
Okay.
The question
Well,
came up last year too, so.
we will discuss it later. Thank you.
You want to ask the audience if there's anyone wants to speak to it?
Anybody
about
want to talk about salt?
So,
Okay.
Well, I guess that concludes the Transportation Committee. Now we'll move on to our regular session. First thing to do is establish a quorum, and I see all members of council are here. The second thing we're going to have to do is I'd like to have someone make a motion to amend the agenda for an executive session to discuss the purchase of property.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
To go into executive,
Yes.
to go into executive session now?
Yes.
No, at the end of the meeting.
At the end of the meeting?
Yeah. Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The agenda has been amended. Disposition of minutes. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes of our last meeting?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. They have been accepted. Next, communications from members of council. Has anyone received any communication they would care to share? Member Spielness.
Yes, I continue to get concerned businesses along West Union worried about what's going to happen. So I'm hoping that we can find some better solutions, because these businesses, as they have said at council, that they are hurting badly and may go under if we don't make some changes. So I'm hoping that we can do some things. I have contacted ODOT on my own to talk to Jobs and Commerce. They said that they couldn't be able to help in any short timeline. I've also reached out to Buckeye Regional Council to see if by any chance they have some emergency money to help in some way, like get flaggers for us, but I haven't gotten far with that yet. So I know the city is trying to come up with some strategies, and we hope to hear more about that.
Member Swank.
In addition to Member Solvay's calls, at the invitation of our local House representative who stood before us and pleaded to work with us, I placed a call to his office too, which is now going on 3 weeks without a return call. I did call Senator Chavez this morning, and hopefully we'll get a response from him soon on the same topic.
Member McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. Following up on our city's efforts around diversity and inclusion, council members and city officials have received an invitation to Ohio University's annual Pride Graduate Recognition and Community Celebration, which is open to the public. It's a free dinner celebration that will be held in Baker University Center, rooms 240 and 242 on Thursday, April 25th, 2024. And this is an event not only recognizing graduating Ohio University students, but also open to local high school students. And for additional information, the public may email pridecenter@ohio.edu. We hope many city officials will be able to attend.
Anything else from members of council? Elected officials, Law Director Eliason. Mr. Mayor, communications?
I have several communications for council this evening. To begin with, the police department received a thank you letter, and so I want to recognize three of our officers, Officer Guthrie, Emmerich, and Foster, for their prompt response to an individual who called in who was unable to get a hold of their parent. And the individual lives 3 hours away from Athens, and so our officers arrived and identified an individual who had hurt themselves accidentally, and were able to provide assistance and get that person safely to where they needed to go. Just wanted to share a big thank you to our fine police department. The second item I want to share with council tonight, this is an important one, is there will be a temporary closure of the bike path from Stimson Avenue to approximately just beyond the construction site for the new fire station headquarters, and it will begin on the 18th of April and run through early July, and this is for the installation of a emergency watercraft ramp and kayaking and canoeing ramp is also accessible to the public to be able to use that as a put in or take out on the Hocking River. So again, just bear that in mind, that it will be closed for a short period of time, but once it'll be reopened, it will be reopened with a new feature that crosses over the bike path. The Athens Arts, Parks and Recreation was awarded $20,000 for the Changing Lives grant. This is for an improvement at the Richland Avenue Park. So this is was great news. Spring cleanup, which I know that Scott and Ryan have been pushing this out. I mentioned this during the mayor's press conference. But there's a lot of activity that's been going on and will continue to go on all the way through, I believe, April 27th, with volunteers coming and helping with our community gardens. Will be on the 20th of April, an Athens Library Play Space cleanup, spring cleanup will go into effect there from 10 a.m. or 10:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Athens Public Library. There's a number of different things. This is on the website. So again, a lot more. It used to be Beautification Day, then it became Beautification Week, and now it's almost Beautification Month, which is awesome. The last thing I want to share with council, I was able to go up to Newark last week to accept this award from the Ohio Department of Transportation, and it is an award, let me see if I can kind of manipulate that a little bit. This is an award, one of 9 awards, and they are nomination awards where there's several entities that are nominated for the different categories. And the categories are everything from contractors to consultants. And this is all in the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion for communities or contractors or consultants that go above and beyond when it comes to ODOT projects of bringing on businesses that are disadvantaged businesses and enterprises, or DBEs. So the City of Athens was recognized with the Local Public Agency of the Year. We had some interesting competition. There were 2 other entities that we were up against, and we were awarded by ODOT, it was all of ODOT, but we were put forward by an individual in District 10, which is our district, And this award recognizes an outstanding local public agency that has excelled in upholding the requirements of the federal program and has demonstrated a track record of partnering with ODOT and DBE firms, while also encouraging the utilization of DBE firms on local let federally funded Department of Transportation projects. So there's another example of the work that we are doing when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but something we, I guess, don't think about all that often when it comes to our Department of Transportation grants for all the sundry of projects that we have going on here in the city of Athens. So there's the award. Thank you, President Reisner, Pro Tem Reisner.
Thank you. Treasurer.
Nothing more to say other than everybody should have received the email this afternoon for the March reconciliations.
Everything came out great. If you have any questions, always feel free to.
Excellent. Okay, we'll move on to ordinance for a third reading. Ordinance 28-24. An ordinance amending the 2024 appropriation ordinance 130-23 and authorizing an interfund transfer introduced by Councilmember Reisner. And since this is the third reading, we have discussed it in committee and it's been read twice. Just to remind everyone, well, first of all, let me make a motion that we will to adopt 28-24.
Second.
Okay, Section 1 briefly states that the appropriation ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $100,000 to General Fund 101 TC 300 for payment for the 2024 Bureau of Workmen's Compensation, BWC, invoices. And then Section 2, the 2024 appropriation ordinance 130-23 is further amended by decreasing ARPA funds 286, transaction code 500, by $140,000 and increasing ARPA fund 286, transaction code 600 for transfer by same amount and increasing and decreasing said appropriation by said amount. Section 3, the auditor is hereby authorized to make the following interfund transfer from ARPA fund 286 to ACIC fund 906, amount $160,432.70. So there it is. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from members of council? Administration, anything to speak on? Treasurer? Audience? We've had a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting 28-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Ordinance 30-24. An ordinance amending ordinance 65-23, authorizing engineering services for rehabilitation of the Stimson Avenue Bridge, project number 358, introduced by Councilmember Spielness.
Okay, so again, third reading, so we need to vote on it tonight. Whereas the city was awarded $3,292,795 from the ODOT Local Major Bridge Program funds to rehabilitate the Stimson Avenue Bridge, as he said. This is the addition. Whereas after a more detailed review of the costs, these things seem to go up, the city has been awarded an additional $1,422,590 from ODOT. So this would include slab replacement, rocker replacement, steel painting, street lighting improvements, and a new concrete deck. So a pretty big correction. And it's important that we maintain our bridges because if we don't, if we let it get worse, it'll cost that much more to fix. So regular maintenance, as you know with your vehicles, is important to do. So Section 1 says 2024 appropriation ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance a sum of $130,000 to street Rehabilitation Fund 572, Transaction Code 500, and increasing the total amounts. This is the additional Section 2, goes to Section 3 of Ordinance 65-23 is hereby amended to read as follows. So the Service Safety Director is further authorized to expend up to $580,000, wow, from the Street Rehabilitation Fund, Street Rehabilitation Fund 572, Transaction Code 500, for said project. So, again, important to do because we want to make sure that we maintain our bridges and roads, so it's not going to be dangerous and more costly later. So I move that we pass this ordinance.
I have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Member Swine?
Question for Service Safety Director Stone. One of the things it mentions in here is street lighting improvements. Since this is the entryway to Stimson Avenue, do you anticipate these lights being consistent in design with what we put up when we improved Stimson Avenue?
Yes.
Okay.
I've got images that I can share with you.
No, I'm
We've
just,
already
you know,
worked it out.
so we can have two different, plaids and stripes on the same street.
That'd be interesting. Any other discussion from council? Members of the administration care to speak on this? No? Okay. Audience? We've had a motion and a second to pass 30-24. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Ordinance has been approved. Now we're going to do ordinance for second reading, and this usually means that I will read the introductory titles to the ordinance, and then we'll just move on unless there's something that needs to be amended or changed. Ordinance for second reading, ordinance 31-24, an ordinance granting a special right-of-way use permit at 74 and 74 and a half North Court Street to replace an existing balcony located in the city right-of-way, introduced by Councilmember Swank. Ordinance 32-24, an ordinance granting a special right-of-way use permit at 32 West Carpenter Street to create a patron drop-off area located in the city right-of-way, introduced by Councilmember Swank. Ordinance 33-24, an ordinance amending Ordinance 02-24, authorizing a city fiber network project number 347, introduced by Councilmember McCary. Ordinance 34-24, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to renew a 5-year contract with Axon Enterprise, Inc. to upgrade body-worn cameras and tasers for the Athens Police Department, introduced by Councilmember McCary. Ordinance 35-24, an ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to accept the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEC, 2024 Energize Community Grants Funds, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Now we'll proceed with ordinance for a first reading. Ordinance 36-24, an ordinance amending Ordinance 74-21 and 116-22, authorizing Athens Uptown Designated Outdoor Refreshment Area, DORA, and hours of operation, and declaring an emergency, introduced by all council members. Is there any member who would care to speak to this? Do we have a volunteer?
Want a motion to declare an emergency? What are you at?
No, I'm asking if,
You just want to talk about it?
well, that's generally the purpose of a first reading, yes.
You seem like you wanted a really big angle on that. No, it's great. I think the mayor's been asking to do this since we first set it up. Slowly moving there. Yeah.
Administration, you have anything? Why do we need to do this? Or don't we need to do it?
Well, I mean, I think we need to do it because it's been proven to be successful in the past, so why not go ahead and move forward? I mean, there's no real cost to the city or significant cost, and it provides for our businesses within these corridors to extend their hours if they so choose to, because there are people who, during the summer months, who are gonna be able to have an adult beverage within the Dora footprint. And I guess it's a good time to reiterate that, is that the ability to have an open container in an authorized cup, a Dora cup, within this area, it can only be in that area. It cannot, someone can't wander off into the undesignated areas to drink their refreshment. It's only within the Dora area. But this is a tool, a Department of Commerce tool, basically to promote commerce within municipalities. It's not uncommon for cities to expand their Dora footprint. I know several mayors who have found it to be very successful and have enhanced the geography of their Dora.
If I can add just a couple
No,
of
please.
things on here from a public safety perspective. Our police department has found zero problems with this configuration that we've done for this last couple of years. In fact, there's some indications are that there actually is a curbing of excessive alcohol consumption, because you can leave an establishment without finishing a drink if you want to move on to a different establishment, as opposed to, feeling compelled to do so. So, there's not a study on that per se, but there is that perception among our law enforcement specifically.
Question down here. Member Wood.
Oh, I'll just add from a uptown business standpoint as well, that as we're doing things like revitalizing the Art Hop, credit to Mike Linscott and Emily Beveridge on that, that we are looking at those things as ways to bring people uptown. It's a great tool for people, those of us that don't serve alcohol in our establishments, to be able to participate in things like that Art Hop. It increases foot traffic throughout the business community. So I think from our standpoint, with my small business hat on, not with my council hat on, I would add that I think it's been a great tool as well, and so it's great to see it continue to expand and develop as we get to familiarize ourselves with it. So strongly in favor of it.
Any other comments from members of council? Administration? Public? Sign in. Name and address, and do you represent a group? And you'll have
Verbalize that.
3 minutes, okay.
Kate Blythe, Morris Avenue. Just curious if there has been any discussion or consideration of extending the Dora down Stimson Avenue and the weekday extension of it going until 11 when the noise ordinance ends at 10. I know it's summer in Athens and probably not a whole lot of concern about it, but the potential conflict of those two ordinances. Just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
Interesting. Could, we're not supposed to debate, and I don't want to debate, but what I would like, could you tell us a little bit more? You kind of piqued some interest up here, I think, on
Yes.
that.
Mayor?
Go ahead. Yeah, and then I'll have a follow-on.
Sure. I guess, with extending down Stimson Avenue with Jackie O's Tap Room sitting right there, there's residential area much closer than when we're talking about the area that's up by Court Street. And, there's generally a lot more noise on Court Street, so folks who live in that area are probably a little more accustomed to it. But down on Stimson, it's, not typical, and with the potential of, as Mayor Patterson was discussing last week, there are some vacancies down on Stimson Avenue that could, in the future, bring in businesses that are going to potentially significantly increase the noise and the use of the Dora up past when the noise ordinance ends, which could potentially create some issues with that, conflict of that hour overlap of the two.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, sorry, I was out there on the interweb looking to see, how late the tap room is open, and it may not even be open, that late even on a weekend night where it goes to 11. So therefore, alcohol sales can only occur within the DORA footprint, and it can only be, and that, again, I guess as a reminder to everybody, the only areas where you can create a DORA is within a business zone. So it has to be zoned for business in order to have them. The areas where we have seen outdoor music that took advantage of the DORA during the summer months were on Court Street or really on Washington, State Street, across from Casa and Tony's, to where they were able to do it. But even then, the music didn't go on until late into the evening. As a matter of fact, I believe the music ended somewhere around 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And so it fits within the noise ordinance, or the noise ordinance. That still holds. And so therefore, if someone did plan to have an event, within the DORA footprint, they have to be in compliance with that code, and can't deviate from that unless they were to come to council and say, can you obviate that section of code for said event, which I don't know would necessarily happen. I think it's a whole different story on Stimson Avenue at this point in time, to where something like that is likely not to occur, nor is there room or space in front of any of those businesses to have outdoor music, other than, say, the tap room. It certainly has space for doing something like that. But again, I think it's important to remember, like I said, that these are only in a business zone. This is not in residential, so this does not apply, which is why we've been really mindful as to where we kind of create the DORA's footprint as it exists, and with the expansion of this one on Stimson Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member's fine.
Monday to Friday, Monday to Thursday, 2 to 9, Friday, Saturday, 12 to 10, and Sunday, 12 to 6 of the hours. So 4 of the 7 nights are closed at 9 o'clock. Jackie O's, speaking of.
Yeah. I hate to admit, but I've never been there. Any further discussion?
Speed this meeting along, we're open till 9.
Yes. Any further discussion on this ordinance? Okay. Ordinance 37-24, an ordinance amending the 2024 appropriation ordinance 130-23 and authorizing interfund transfers, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. And I will read it. Be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $40,000 to ARPA Fund 273, Transaction Code 500 for soccer netting, $1,253.63 to the Luke's Trust Fund 650, Transaction Code 600 for transfer and fund line closure, and $63,000 to Capital Improvements Fund 580.580, Transaction Code 600 to transfer and increase the total appropriations by said amount. Section 2, the auditor is hereby authorized to make the following interfund transfer: from Luke's Trust Fund 650 to Cemetery Fund 210, amount $1,253.63. Capital Improvements Fund 580 to Transportation Assistance Fund 214, $63,000. Section 3, this ordinance shall be in effect in full force upon passage and approval by the mayor. Any comments or discussion? Oh, Member Clotfelder.
I wonder if it might be beneficial for the public to hear what kind of soccer netting costs $40,000.
Yes, it probably would.
If one of you would like to take that.
You can.
Sure. Yeah, before I answer that question, to be clear, it's APR Fund 273, not ARPA Fund. So.
Did I say that?
Yeah, well, you said ARPA, but we're not using ARPA funds for this. We've already spoken for all ARPA funds. This is specifically the Arts, Parks, and Recreation levy.
Okay, I'm
Not
sorry.
one letter, I get it, it's fine. I was scrambling to look to make sure that, because we've already committed that ARPA money for other things, and I can't spend it on that.
never be
So, Member
forgiven.
Pop-Filter's question, this is for
made
a
a
very
mistake.
large net. This is not for soccer nets of goals. This is for a very large net to separate the golf driving range from the soccer fields. And so think in terms of, several hundred feet long, 70 feet high. It's an expensive ordeal to be able to do this, but, that's flat green space is in high demand. And so with the effort a couple years ago to try to secure a portion of that flat green space from Ohio University via lease, a requirement that was levied upon the city to if we could do that, we could lease it for free or for $18.04, which is the standard lease amount for Ohio University if they're leasing land to the city. But we have to build a net in between the two, and it actually will be quite a bit more than the $40,000. We had put money in the budget, but it won't be enough, and so we're working on getting that pulled together and getting it delivered.
Any other comments? Member Spilnes?
Yeah, so because we've had notification from our auditor that we need to be careful about the cash, is this something that could be delayed?
You could ask the soccer community, Member Spelness. The soccer community has been waiting for a very long time to expand this, and this was our effort to do that. This is the recreation levy fund. It's not the general fund. So this money has to be spent on capital improvement projects for arts, parks, and recreation. So, conceivably we could spend it on something else, or we could save it, but it's not the same fund that is used to pay the various expenses out of the general fund.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I'm just, with a heavy bias from the soccer community, I would like to support everything that Director Stone just said. We've waited a long time and a lot of discussions to get some flat space, not a floodplain. So we appreciate all of the city's work to do this and to make it happen with the excessively heighted nets.
I have one question or two. Just how big is this net? What's its dimensions?
Probably about 250 yards long.
No, I'm serious.
No, I'm very serious. Being an avid golfer, playing 100 times a year, I can probably tell you down to the inch how big it's going to be. And the reason it's being positioned where it is, the vast majority of golfers are right-handed, and the vast majority of golfers slice, which means you're here, the soccer fields are there, and it will need to be on that side. It'll need to be, as Director Stone said, 60, 70, 80 feet high, because people hit higher and higher balls all the time with the change in technology. And it's a health and safety issue for the soccer folks over there. You can get hit with a water balloon, that's one thing, but a golf ball will kill you. And I'm not trying to be facetious. It's a big, big net, and will extend 250 to 300 yards down that way.
And, 300 yards long and 60 or 70 feet high.
70 feet for the first couple hundred yards, and then for the last 100 or so yards, 50 feet. We figure that if you can hit that far, you're probably not going to slice, beyond, 200 yards. So.
Okay, second question, how fine is the net?
I can get the dimensions and provide them to council. I don't have the fineness of the net here with me this evening.
Okay, but fine enough to stop a golf ball?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say this, and I please, I'm not being facetious or trying to be amusing. I see an awful lot of wildlife getting trapped in this thing. Birds, deer, I don't know. Is that a factor in any of this?
Never heard of it. I can't. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but my 60-plus years of playing golf, I've never heard of it happening.
So these nets are fairly common?
Yeah, they're very much so. You go up in the Columbus area. Well,
I don't know. I don't play golf
Go to
either.
the Chelsea Pier in New York City, and they have one on either side where you can hit out into the Hudson River.
2 more comments this way.
Member Clodfelder?
Just another net question, if I may. What material is it made of, and how likely is it to last for a long time?
Along with the dimensions of the size of the holes, I don't have that information here with me this evening, but I will get it to City Council well before this ordinance passes, so you can fully evaluate the condition of said nets.
Thank you.
Just for, because you're not sure what we're talking about, do you remember the driving range along 33 before the Lancaster bypass?
No.
So there's one right along 33. If you go through town, it was there. You're not helping me, Jeff.
There used to be one out by the Days Inn too, right here in town.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're very common. Where you're trying to do multiple things in a small amount of space.
One more.
Oh, yes, Member McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. Appreciate the very detailed discussion of the net and the efforts to go into securing it. I also appreciate the clarification that Director Stone gave about these being funds that are not drawn from our general fund that we're concerned about for cash balance. So I just think for our own education and that of the public, is it the case, I am very supportive of this, but when we encounter similar expenses that are not in the general fund, but if we don't use them, are we allowed to put those funds into the general fund for the next year?
No, I can speak to it.
Is that a question for our treasurer or any member? Oh, yes. Yep.
So it's specific to the fund. So in this case, the 273 fund was a voter-approved levy that was put in place primarily to fund debt service on the pool. However, there's more money that comes in beyond what's necessary for debt service on the pool, and that money is designated for capital improvements in the arts, parks, and recreation thing. There are similar other voter-approved levies, for instance, the street rehab levy, or the safety, public safety capital levy. In both cases, those have to be designated for those particular expenses. There are some other funds that are not voter-approved initiatives that by decision that you make, when you talk about the income tax mix, like we have before, they go into a particular spot other than the general fund. For instance, income tax gets a percentage of it into the street fund, for instance, or a percentage of it into the capital improvement funds 580. Those would be ones that you could do an interfund transfer to allow to go into the general fund.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Any further, Member Wood?
I feel obligated to get on the net discussion here. Does this mean that the soccer community is going to get that stretch out? Some of you might remember late Athens resident Marty Dekas, who had Martyville out there on the other side of the bike path and the driving range. And it's my huge honor to get Martyville immortalized in Athens City City Council notes. Are we going to take that area for the soccer fields as well? Is that part of the plan?
It'll stretch from along the road that goes down to the OU farm. That whole stretch will turn into 2 to 3, depending on the size,
Okay.
fields.
Yeah.
They're currently being used for pickup. You'll see people down there playing what they can already, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the area. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Administration have anything else to add? Public?
Sign it again, or I'm good?
Well, just at least tell us your name.
Kate Blythe, Morris Avenue. As Member Thomas said, definitely a safety issue. And Member Swank, I appreciate your note. I was playing down there last night. We pulled 3 dozen golf balls off of the smaller than average size field, and one landed on the field while we were playing. So definitely a safety issue. I'm also an environmental scientist. The issue of the net and wildlife, appreciate the flag. I wouldn't be super concerned about it because it's a non-contiguous thing, right? It's one chunk. It doesn't continue on. The deer can easily get around it. Birds will fly over it. There are no nesting trees nearby that they're going to nest in. It's a pretty open area. So that's my, unofficial, obviously haven't studied it, but just for reference. So thanks.
Thank you.
Go team.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, we'll move on to the next ordinance. Ordinance 38-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 03-21, authorizing the city auditor to deposit 50% of the transient guest tax revenue into the tourism fund and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. And the ordinance reads as Section 1 of Ordinance 03-21 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 1, the Athens City Auditor is hereby authorized to deposit of the transient guest tax revenue collected for the period, and this is the amendment, we're striking out the word of and inserting beginning, January 1, we're striking out 2021 and changing it to 2018. Accordance with the Ohio Revised Code Section 5739.09B1. And then Section 2, this is an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of the city of Athens. So, there's the ordinance read. Member Spielness.
Yes, it's my understanding that monies in the transient guest tax could be moved into the general fund, which seems like a good idea to me, and I'm not clear based on this, why it should be moved into the tourism fund, nor how much money this would actually be.
Member Swine.
The money going to the tourism fund, isn't that what we're required by law to contribute to, I'm stuck on the plural, the bureaus, the convention bureaus, yes. So that's why it goes in there first and then it goes. And in prior years, prior to COVID, we were running in the neighborhood of $400,000 to $450,000 a year total. Half goes one way, half goes the other way. The county, they levy the same 3%, but 100% of their money goes to the Tourism Bureau to fund its operation.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Mayor.
This ordinance is basically amending the existing ordinance to where we don't have to go back and reauthorize this every single year for something that by Ohio Revised Code statute, we have to do anyway. So this cleans up that language to where council, hopefully, if with passage by council, we never have to revisit this again when it comes to the authorization for 50% of the transient guest tax going to the Convention and Tourism Bureau, and then the remaining 50% goes into our general fund.
Any further discussion? No? Members of the public? Okay. We'll move on to our next ordinance. Ordinance 39-24. An ordinance amending Ordinance 27-24, amending the 2024 appropriation ordinance introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Let's see here. Let me call it up. Section 1, Section 2 of Ordinance 27-24 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 2, the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is further amended by decreasing Diversion Fund 232 Transaction Code 100 by $44,900 and decreasing, here's the amendment, we're striking out DUI court, inserting Community Corrections Fund, striking out 237, replacing it with 235, TC 100 by $66,500 and decreasing the total appropriations by said amount. Any discussion? Member Klutfelder.
Just curious, as has been raised already in this meeting and in previous city council meetings, the city budget's pretty tight right now. I mean, we're talking about a hiring freeze. I just wonder if the appropriation of the $65,500 is, or $66,500, if it would be possible to do that later in the year, or if that is a time-sensitive thing that really does need to be done in May. Would the mayor care to speak to that?
This was a request from the auditor's office, so I can't speak to it entirely intelligently. I don't know if our treasurer can on her behalf, but I believe it's an amendment to the particular fund from 237 to 235, because the previous ordinance that you already passed to do this specified Fund 237, and instead, that was an error, and it needs to be Fund 235. Is that
That's
correct?
basically it. It was, I mean,
It's almost like a typo, but it wasn't really a typo. It was a clerical error, and it just needs to be cleaned up so that the fund numbers are correct. The fund names and the fund numbers are correct on the ordinance. But again, this was already passed quite a while ago. Again, but once after it passed, the deputy auditor looked through and realized, oh, shoot, I put the wrong number on there. So it's just cleaning that up is all this is doing.
And, Mr. Treasurer, do you know if the money is needed soon, or is it possible that the expenditure could be delayed a bit?
Well, I think the one thing to remember, to the point that Member Spilness made too, when we talk about the expenditures, what the auditor was trying to get through when the auditor Heck sent out the email, we're talking about things that are in the general fund. When you look at all these ordinances that come through, if it's taken out of other funds, like to Andy's point, transportation fund, these are funds that are healthy. They have balances that can be worked with. It's when we come up to when you come to an ordinance that's specifically talking about general funds being spent out of the general fund, that's when we want to have more conversations. But most of this has already been taken care of, and this is not general fund money. So, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Any other comments? Public? You never know. Okay. Well, it's been read. Ordinance 40-24, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to execute a purchase agreement with the Atlantic Emergency Solutions, Inc. for the purchase of a fire pumper truck and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. I'd like to move that we suspend the rules for ordinance 40-24.
Second.
Thank you. The reason for that is that this pumper truck needs to be purchased while we can still get the purchase rate secured, and it does take 3 years to actually build these pumper trucks. So we want to get the price locked in now, although we won't actually experience the benefit of this truck for another few years. And I'll be happy to read the ordinance if that would be helpful. If not, are there any questions? Okay, a request, okay. So whereas the equipment is specialized, limited to a single source provider, and therefore competitive bidding is not required, and whereas said fire pumper truck will not be delivered until 2027 with no payments due until then, and whereas any future contributions from Ohio University for fire apparatus shall be applied to the purchase price, be it ordained by the City Council of Athens, Ohio, that Section 1, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to execute a purchase agreement with Atlantic Emergency Solutions, Inc. for the purchase of a fire pumper truck in the amount of $1,137,835. A copy of said purchase agreement is attached here to and incorporated here within for reference. And that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of health, welfare, and safety by the residents of the city of Athens, Ohio, in order to meet a May 31st, 2024 deadline to lock in that price quote, and that it shall be in full force and effect upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
Thank you.
But
Comments?
Suspending the rules first.
Rules have been suspended. Now I'd like to move that we adopt.
No, we haven't voted.
We have to vote on it.
Thank
We
you,
have a
thank
vote.
you. Do you want to facilitate that?
Well, what I was asking was, is there any discussion about suspension of the rules?
No.
That's the motion that's before us. If there's no discussion, then we will move on to a vote. All those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Rules have been suspended. Member McCary?
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. I move that we adopt ordinance 40-24.
Second.
It's been read for the first time, but we have a question from Member Swink.
The third whereas any future contributions from Ohio University for fire apparatus shall be applied to the purchase price. Picking up on the theme that Member Clodfelder brought up, finances, are we anticipating any of these? Any indication that there might be some money coming?
We have had an agreement with Ohio University for many years now. It started in 5-year increments to where we were getting $50,000 a year when we knew that we had to purchase a new tower truck, which was at the time a $1.2 million piece of equipment. We've since used it for a pumper truck or two because we had a second round, $250,000 over the course of 5 years. We're currently under it was amended to where it was in 3-year increments. We're currently under a 3-year increment with Ohio University. I think we're year 1 into that, and we will continue to work with the university to extend that when the time comes for another 3-year round or longer if possible, and certainly exploring the possibility of changing the allotted amounts. But we will continue to work with the university to have this funding coming in, because this is important when you look at the responses that our fire department is having to make, as well as I've always been concerned over the heights of some of the buildings. When you look at the 4-story plus structures on campus versus those in the city. Now, our tower truck, just to kind of qualify that too, is also a piece of equipment that's needed, and we're not replacing the tower truck, but someday. But that tower truck is not only for the height of a building, but it's for its total square footage. So a facility like that of Lowe's or Walmart would require a tower to reach over the top and extend out over the top to be able to battle any potential fire or emergency of that nature. So again, I'm kind of digressing a tad, but again, the importance of this money coming in, especially that from the university, has been really important for us to be able to purchase these expensive pieces of equipment.
Any other discussion? Member Wood?
I'll just chime in and say that I had the pleasure of spending the day with Chief Reimer recently and learning a lot about the fire department and their operations. I was shocked. We were talking about this truck. I was shocked by the number, and he said this is actually a deal in a lot of ways that are, they're skyrocketing in cost, so it's really important to get in on it. And to the OU conversation, he also said that nearly more than 50% of their runs are to Ohio University that they go. So it's good that they're contributing to that because that's a huge amount of their obligations as the fire department. So I think it's great if we can support them in having the up-to-date equipment and the quality equipment at a now cost, not a 3 years later cost.
Mm-hmm.
Any further comments? You've had a motion and a second to adopt 40-24. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. 40-24 has been adopted. 41-24, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application and enter into an agreement with the Ohio Development Services Agency for any eligible community development block grant, CDBG, program funds for program year 2024, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. We discussed this just earlier today with a public hearing, and Section 1 of the ordinance reads that the mayor is hereby authorized to submit an application and enter into an agreement with the Ohio Development Services Agency for any eligible community development block grant, CDBG, program funds for the program year 2024, and that this ordinance shall be in effect and full force upon its passage and approval by the mayor. I believe my question, perhaps for the clerk, is whether or not the second hearing has been scheduled yet.
But I don't recall
what it is, sometime maybe the end of May.
Okay, just checking for the sake of this being the first reading and confirming that if we do have that second public hearing at the end of May, then we'll be entirely within time for the third reading of this ordinance. And I wonder if anyone else has questions or comments. Thank you, President Pro Tem.
Thank you.
It's
Ordinance,
actually May 20th.
May 20th, thank you. And Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor.
I would just like to kind of alert council on the amount of effort, the amount of time it takes to administer a CDBG grant. I'm just sharing that because it is time consuming. It's an important funding stream to come in to the city. But it is time consuming for our grants administrator to sit and manage something like that. There's many more steps to do this. And I want council to know that this is something that I brought up on Capitol Hill with the federal government, saying there's got to be a easier way to streamline the processing when it comes to something like any community development block grant. Every municipality deals with a lot of people hours that go into all of the paperwork, the processing, having to make sure every T is crossed and I is dotted, as you would with any contract, but this is extensive. I just want council to be aware of that our grants administrator puts a lot of time into this.
Thank you. For clarification, Mr. Mayor, and actually for Director Stone as well, the time that goes into the administration of these grants once awarded also includes progress reporting. Is that correct? Like how far along is the project?
Yeah, that's part of it.
Okay.
There's that. There's the documentation on the front end. It's an onerous process for not a lot of money. Really. I mean, we'll get millions of dollars from ODOT to do transportation projects for a third of the staff work necessary to do it. Now, I mean, there's bigger match requirements that come along with that ODOT money. You get your 20% match of construction, plus you got to pay for design, and so you have an outlay that comes with those multi-million dollars. Whereas with the CDBG grant, I mean, if you can do it for the small amount of money they give you, you can do it all with 100% federal CDBG money. But along with it is just an onerous process. It's just. I don't know, it's a program that's been around for a long time, and since it's been around for a long time, there's been a lot of people that have stuck a lot of rules about how it's spent, and each rule adds time, both for our staff, for HAPCAP, which we work with pretty extensively, for people that work at the state level, and then for people who work at the federal level. There's a lot of people hours that go into doing these particular funding streams.
So, and we do appreciate, being eligible to use this money because there is need, especially within our distressed census blocks in the city of Athens, or the qualifying census blocks. But again, I just wanted to make a point for council to recognize that there's for $150,000, $75,000 a year for 2 years, total of $150,000. It is a lot of work. And again, just note that I am addressing this with our federal government to say there's got to be an easier way to do this. Or I'd like to believe there's an easier way to do this.
Yeah. With that, and the fact, and Clerk, you did say May 20th for the public hearing, and that would be at 7 o'clock. Is that right? In City Council chambers. I'm encouraging citizens with ideas for community development, rehabilitation projects to attend. If they cannot attend to share their ideas, they can email any city council member or member of the mayor's administration. I do think while we have the administration here, it'd be helpful to hear, especially from looking at past examples of CDBG projects, for the amount of effort that goes into administering these grants. Are there some projects, for example, like sidewalk repairs, that Director Stone or the mayor might say are more arduous for these kinds of grants than are, worth it? And some projects that lend themselves better to the amount of work versus the payoff?
I don't think that there is. I mean, we've been pretty effective in how we are able to use our CDBG funding. And as I indicated, it's been everything from, renovation of a city-owned home that is managed by the Metropolitan Housing Authority to the Kimes Reservoir, and everything in between. We just find, with citizenry input, as to what would be, the best project to put this towards, or projects, plural. It just all depends. And then, yeah, the bidding process, if it has to go out to bid too, that's another thing that that can be arduous. And given this climate, we've had several challenges of late when it comes to getting companies to bid on some of these things. And so that's another challenge that we're going to experience. There's no doubt in my mind. Is there enough out of this $150,000 for a contractor to sit there and say, yep, we're going to go ahead and bid on that, or or possibly we can do some of the work in-house.
And I would dovetail onto what the mayor said. I mean, these will be a little piece of a bigger expenditure. And so the last two that we've done were one that's underway right now, which is the Columbus Road Lift Stations project that's under design. And, that'll be a $3 million project, of which this will be a $150,000 drop in the ocean. The one before that was the West Washington Street sidewalk and lighting project. And I think there was about as much local money in that as there was CDBG money when everything came across the finish line for that. So those are two recent examples. I could probably go all the way back, at least in my head, to 2008 to try to remember what we've done for different ones. And they all had some sort of additional local expenditure above and beyond the amount from CDBG.
Member Swain.
Is there a map that shows which census blocks in the city would qualify?
Yes, there is.
Is that online somewhere, or?
We can get you that.
Okay.
It is online. You can go to the U.S. Census Bureau and look at, where we have low to moderate income census tracts that qualify for CDBG and qualify for other types of funding that's out there.
I thought it might be easier for the public to come up with ideas. Obviously, if you're on Upper Elmwood, I don't think that's in that area. But there are other parts of the city that are. Oh, this is eligible. What can we do in that area? It may help in bringing forth some ideas.
I'll send it to council.
Member Clockfelder.
And I wonder if it might be worth letting some of the neighborhood associations know that citizen ideas are being solicited for this and where the map is located. I mean, if we really want to get input, there are probably a lot of people in Athens with really good ideas. If we can facilitate them coming forward with them, we might, end up with better projects.
We can certainly do that if the area within that census block, a particular census block has a neighborhood association. Some of these do not fall within the various neighborhood associations.
I believe the West Side Neighborhood Association is still active.
They are.
Yeah, and
They are.
that might be a good one.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say the West Side Community Association would appreciate getting that information.
Mr. Mayor.
And I could be wrong on this, but I believe they had been in the past with the Washington Street lighting enhancement. We certainly heard from a lot of individuals who use Washington Street as they are, as they walk from point A to point B. And it was that group who were truly concerned about the safety on that street when it came to lighting, as well as overgrown shrubs and trees and things of that nature. So, we took that into account and created improvements on.
Yeah, just real quick, we're scheduled to have a meeting the last week of the month. So if we could get that before then, the last Wednesday of the month. So if we could get that information, I could center the conversation around that.
Any further discussion? Okay. Did you have something?
Yeah, can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Paul Miller, Morris Avenue. Would there be somewhere the public can access guidelines to what would be funded by the CDBG fund? So you can say, hey, this project, you need to meet these requirements to be able to get funded. Is there a...
We can probably pull down a
I was just curious if they're asking for public input and want people to come to the hearing like, hey, you need to have these qualifications met if you want a project to be funded. Cool, thank you. Oh.
Okay. Ordinance 42-24, an ordinance authorizing a city network upgrade project number 369, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. I will read Ordinance 42-24 for the first time. Whereas said project includes replacement of all city network switches, wireless access points, and additional hardware for the fiber project to greatly reduce technical issues from aging technology and non-uniformity of equipment, and the equipment needed for the planned project for Court Street wireless access. And whereas the said equipment is specialized technology with programming services that are proprietary, limited to a single source, and therefore competitive bidding is not required, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, that Section 1, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to enter into a contract with the Go2IT or Go2It group for installation and equipment replacement for a city network upgrade project number 369. Section 2 reads that the 2024 appropriation ordinance, Ordinance 130-23, is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $250,000 to Capital Improvements Fund and increasing the total appropriations by said amounts. Section 3 reads that the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $250,000 from Capital Improvements Fund 580.580 Transaction Class 500 for said project number 369. I believe we talked about this thoroughly in committee as a helpful technological infrastructure upgrade. If anyone has any additional questions or comments, hear those at this time. Don't see any.
Any discussion? Sounds perfect. Anything from the administration on this? Okay. No? Public? Very well. Ordinance 43-24, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of a bucket truck for the street department, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. Not to be confused with our pumper truck discussed earlier, Ordinance 43-24 reads that the Ohio Revised Code Section 735.052 allows that a city may purchase used equipment without advertising and bidding under certain conditions. And whereas the Engineering and Public Works Department has located a 2019 bucket truck that meets the city's needs, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Athens that the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $125,000 for a used bucket truck from Street Fund 220. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law upon its passage and approval by the mayor. Another important purchase. Appreciate the administration finding a used one that meets our needs. If there are any questions or comments from council or the administration or the public. Yes.
I find the language about the timing of this a little interesting. We don't often have it read that it shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law. Is there a need to handle this really quickly?
No, we need to replace it. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
But it doesn't need to be, the rules don't need to be suspended or?
No.
Okay, all right, good.
Any other comments from council? Administration, anything further? No? Public?
Can I ask what is a bucket truck? What is that? Hi, Brittany Harrison lives on 19 East Carpenter Street. What is a bucket truck? What is that?
For the most detailed description, I'll ask our administration. What's a bucket truck?
You may have seen our bucket truck out replacing the banners on occasion that go over Court Street. It's a truck that is designed to have a large boom on it and a bucket that a our employees can get inside of and go up. And,
Like, so like at Walmart,
Yeah.
like those things, like the big blue things that go up
Sort
in
of.
the roof.
Yeah, but sort of like that. There's a truck that just has a large arm on it with a bucket that someone can stand in.
So like the electrical thing, like sometimes in different areas, or
Pardon me?
like when you get for the like the poles.
Yes,
Yeah, like the electric company.
that's correct.
Okay, so that was fine. Okay. Sorry.
Or everyone's favorite company, Asplund, when they're tree trimming.
Okay. Ordinance 44-24. An ordinance authorizing participation in the Ohio Department of Transportation's Cooperative Purchasing Program and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Spielness.
Okay, as promised, you recall early at the beginning of the meeting today, we discussed the importance of having salt and getting into this purchasing program so that we can get the best deal through the state. So now we're going to request, because it's an emergency, suspending the rules, so
Request to suspend the rules.
that's what I was going to say. Okay.
Sorry.
So requesting to suspend the rules.
Second?
We've had a motion to suspend the rules and a second. And the reasons for it?
Is because we have to get this done before May 3rd, and so it's an urgent situation.
Good reason. All those in favor of suspending the rules for ordinance 44-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Rules are suspended, Member Spielness.
Okay, moving on. So, as I said before and now, it's important that we have winter road salt, and we have to get this done early, as was just explained. We get these things at the last minute, so we're kind of stuck with this every year, apparently. So I'm asking that after what you've heard and the importance of getting this done, and knowing that we do have a reserve from last year, but that may not be enough. We have to make sure that we have adequate supplies, because one never knows about Ohio weather. So I'm asking to move that we pass ordinance 04424.
Member Clotfelder.
I think it's a good idea to see if going in with the state will get us a better price on this and save the city some money. Have we done that in the past? Have we been part of this cooperative buying endeavor?
We have.
Okay. Yeah, that's great if in fact it saves the city money.
Other members, council? Okay. So, who did the second? I didn't catch that.
I don't think we had a
Yeah,
first.
We haven't had a motion yet to
Haven't had a
to
motion,
adopt?
yeah.
Would you care to make a motion?
I thought I did, but
I thought you
okay,
did
I
too.
move that we pass
second.
O-44-24.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second to adopt 44-24. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, it's been passed. And the last one for tonight, 45-24, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to pay the 2024 membership fee for the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia, ORCA, to provide financial support from the city's transient guest tax for the Bailey's Trail System, along with other recreational activities introduced by Councilmember Wood.
Yeah, thank you, President Pro Tem. It's my great honor to get to introduce this to simplify some language in support of the ORCA COG. I think that this is a great way that we can show support for an excellent project. We've heard last week from the mayor that this is a strong part of our community and something that he strongly supports. We've heard from the mayor of Chansey, and we've heard from a number of businesses that the ORCA COG and the Bailey's Trail System is something that's very vital to their success. And this is not new funds. This is something we've already approved. I think that that is also important, that we stress that this is money that we've already appropriated. And this is simply making it not contingent on the county commissioners element of it. I think that we've had a lot of discussions of businesses and other parts of the community struggling, asking for stability and asking for us to be active and proactive. This is a super cheap way to do it. This is about the cheapest thing you can do to help support an excellent, environmentally sensitive project that supports businesses in the area. So all we're doing is removing 2 words, or 3 words from the original thing that we passed. And so I think that this should be something that we should do very quickly. And it's a great way for us to support businesses, our local environment, and our tourism. So I ask that council support it.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I have an
Members.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yep, raised my hand, sorry. My apologies.
Who are you?
Have to go sit in the hallway, I guess. I'm looking at an email that we received on Friday afternoon, April the 5th, which all members of council received. It's from the auditor, Kathy Heck. And I'm not going to read the whole email, but the third paragraph is what I struggle with. And I'm guessing other members of council may also struggle with this. We've kind of alluded to this evening, the city's budget situation. And the email says, I would like to ask for a hold on any future general fund appropriations and any budgeted non-operating expenses until the fund balance increases to at least 9%. Now, I have to put this in context. Our policy has set our undesignated fund balance to be 7.5 to 15% of our annual operating expenditures. 7.5 to 15. As of March 31st, which is the most recent month-end close, our general funds balance is at 6%. Full 1.5% less than policy. A policy that was first passed in 2011, 13 years ago. So I'll read that short paragraph again. I would like to ask for a hold on any future general fund appropriations and any budgeted non-operating expenses until the fund balance increases to at least 9%, which would be a 50% increase from where we are now. I don't think there's a person at this dais today that doesn't see the value in the Baileys, but it is a non-operating expense. And I have a great deal of difficulty disregarding the professional experience of a citywide elected official who in over 20 years has brought us nothing but top-notch bond ratings. And when we talk about bond ratings, one of the things the bond companies consider is, are we following our policies? And if we were to spend this money today, we would continue to be out of compliance with our policy, which potentially could affect our bond rating. I'm scared when I say this because our treasurer is much more an expert on this than I. But it's kind of like when you get north of 45 or 50 years old and you get out of shape, it takes 3 times as long to get back into shape as it does to get out of shape. Similarly with bond ratings, if you lose a rating or a rating declines, it takes much, much, much more work to get that bond rating back. And the importance of that is when we go to secure bonds, we're asking the citizens of the city to pay for those bonds through interest rates. And the worse the bond rating is, the higher the interest rate. Consequently, the more the citizens of Athens need to pay in taxes. Our auditors in California on a well-deserved vacation, there's a lot that I think is still unanswered in this. And in fact, I've brought multiple papers here which I could read from. But I think rather than bogging down into the weeds, as my wife often says, I would like to have all the necessary players at the table to have a further conversation on this, particularly the financial impact. Because with this document that we got from the auditor last year, after May 15th, we had a total of 11 unexpected expenses that needed to come out of the general fund for a total of $360,000. Will it happen again this year? None of us have a crystal ball. So, Mr. President Pro Tem, I would suggest, so that we can have further discussion and greater input from all parties, that we table this ordinance tonight.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir, I so move.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
We've had a motion, a second. We have discussion about tabling, or is it just voted on?
Discussion.
Discussion.
Discussion, very well. Is there discussion on the tabling of this ordinance?
Oh.
Member Wood?
And-
Or who? Come on, make up your minds.
Before we, I suppose, during the discussion to decide whether or not we table this, I just want to confirm my understanding that this would be the first reading, so we would still have quite a few more weeks before this is voted upon in its final form. And during that time, it could be tabled at any point, and I just want to make sure I have that correct.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I would
Member Wood?
I would add that we discussed this last week. Members asked to take it off the table.
It was never
a,
tabled. It was never tabled.
And thank you. And I'm so glad that you brought up your concerns, Member Swank, because, you know, it's not $40,000 for the soccer nets or, $1 million for the fire truck. But again, I think there's clear language in here that addresses that issue, and we can proceed to have this discussion.
I would just remind you that those funds came from specific funds that they were voted for, and this is coming from the general fund, which is what Auditor Hecht specifically was speaking about. So, very different.
Member Spielness?
Well, I'm just going to say this, as far as I'm concerned, one of our most important responsibilities right now is to do what we can for West Union and those businesses. And if we're going to spend some extra money, I'd rather see it go to alleviate their business concerns and worry about Bailey's Trail later on. So that's why I agree with tabling it right now. I mean, I go along with, I want the money to go to them. But I think I can't ignore what Auditor Hecht has to say. And I think that Member Swank did a beautiful job of explaining why it's so important that we do not spend the money right now. Maybe in August. I don't know, hopefully. But I think right now is just too much of a risk and could put us in trouble with our bond ratings, and we can't afford to do that.
Any comments from the administration?
I hear both sides of, it's not a debate, the conversation that's taking place tonight. Again, when this came up more recently, my chief concern or suggestion, concern as well, was to decouple the original language, which was, I'm guessing it was a 2017 ordinance, maybe it was a 2018 ordinance that spoke to the city of Athens paying under the pay for success model, or whatever the language was. I don't recall. I need to go back. The clerk of council and I were chatting about this earlier, is I do need to go back and look at that more thoroughly to decouple the language that just basically stated that it was contingent upon the county paying an equal share. There was 1 year where the county was able to pay half of the $90,000. I came to council and asked, since that language is in there, we too need to pay half, or what the county could pay. It was this equity clause, basically, that both were required. If one would pay, the other paid. If the other one couldn't pay, the other can't pay. So it was decoupling that language is one of the things I would like to see. You know, this ordinance, while I appreciate the tabling of it, it does have a provision in here that states that provided that the proceeds of such taxes are sufficient, legally available, and lawfully appropriate for the purpose. So as I'm reading that language, as was indicated with our requirement, our own policy, at this point in time, I cannot pay that. It doesn't mean that council can't approve this. Council could approve this if you so choose, but I can't sit there and make any, I can't pay an expense if it is in violation with our own policy when it comes to being solvent as a community.
Any other okay, one more time.
Okay, so it
Spillnes.
just appears that proceeds, provided that the proceeds of such tax are sufficient, what exactly, is the policy clear on that? I mean, how clear is it? Is it 6%, is it 7%, is it 8%? I mean, we say 7.5 to 15 is what we want.
Well, so to answer that point, if you don't mind, that's kind of two parts in this. When you're saying that the tax is sufficient, that would mean that there is enough transient guest tax that has come in at that particular time of year to pay that money. Keep in mind, transient guest tax comes in all year long. So let's put it in perspective. If you said, can you pay $90,000 out of the transient guest tax on January 30th, the answer might be no, because we haven't received that transient guest tax yet. So the first line is that tax sufficient? So we would need to know that that money's there. The second part, the legally available, as the mayor said, then that goes to what the auditor's policy, or what the auditor emailed you about, that our fund balance policy, right now, it would not be legal for us to technically pay that money because it would violate our own policy that we set in 2011. So again, it's sort of two things there. When you say such tax are sufficient, that means that we have to be receiving the transient guest tax to begin with. Let's just say there was a couple months where the hotels had no business, right? We're not going to receive any transient guest tax. So one, we have to have the money from the tax. Two, it has to be legally available and in accordance with our fund balance policy.
And so that would be a minimum of 7.5%?
Correct. The fund balance policy, we want to get back to 7.5%. That's what the auditor is asking for, yes.
Okay, so that covers the legal part of it.
Correct.
Okay.
Member Wood.
Yeah, I think that's important, and I thank you for that clarity. I think that, again, that we've got a clear path to success on that we don't act until we have the money. We simply are again, reapproving something we've done. I think it's not a robbing Peter to pay Paul situation. We're not discussing taking money away from Union Street in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I would argue that this strongly supports having businesses have more stability and having a more of a feeling that we're going to be there for them. We've heard from a number of businesses in that area that they will struggle if we don't support this. And so I think that is helping alleviate the stressors that other businesses are considering. For me, that's important that we keep our word and we keep our commitments. So nobody's suggesting that we violate our principles. Nobody's suggesting that we change on the 7%. We're saying once that fund comes in, we keep our earlier approved commitment and support this project. So I think that is important, and I thank you, Mayor, for clarifying that.
Member McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. I appreciate the writing of the resolution and the clarification about the fund balance and the legal wording there. I'm also appreciating that the Bailey's Trail, along with recreation and tourism in general, is the second highest priority according to our economic development and entrepreneurship section of our comprehensive plan, our Athens 2040 comprehensive plan, right underneath renewable energy, recreation, and tourism. Specifically highlighting the Bailey's Mountain Bike Trail is something that we are thinking about for long-term benefits, but I do have a specific question for the treasurer or other administration present with regard to the funds that we're talking about being from transient guest tax. If they're not used, could they even hypothetically be used for some purpose that would support businesses on Union Street?
General fund.
General fund.
So our share of the transient guest tax does not go into a specific fund line somewhere. It enters into the general fund, that's dispersed throughout all of the general fund accounts. So it's not a specific thing. So it can't be used for what you're mentioning because it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I'm just having trouble thinking of a specific use, like we can't buy a bunch of hot dogs from Larry's with it, right?
On Wednesday.
Oh, they could use that.
Yeah, just to repeat my question, it's just, is it feasible for any of these funds to actually help with the Union Street issue?
You mean to subsidize the business?
That's the only way I can think of, but if other council members had other things in
For
mind.
example, if we wanted to spend that money on hiring flaggers, mechanical lighting devices, yes, to speed up the process or make it more accessible, yes.
And that would be fine, that wouldn't have to be transportation dollars?
I'm sorry, I don't want to, muddy this more than so I'll try not to. Right now, we're not using any general fund money to pay for the Union Street project. The Union Street project is being funded by ODOT, both grant and loan money, issue one money, which is state money specifically, not federal, state money, local street money, and local water fund money. No general fund money is going into that project. About 1/2 of the external funds coming in are debt. Through a SIB loan, a state infrastructure bank loan. And so we'll have to pay that back at the end of the project. We could borrow more to give money to businesses. I would strongly recommend against doing that because it's not something we've ever done before. And then we'll continue to pay that back with interest for any type of outlay that would go to them. But, certainly we could do that. Additionally, if you wanted to take general fund money, it's general revenue, which means it's unrestricted, and you could spend it to buy hot dogs if you wanted to. Again, I would recommend against it. Anytime we have an outlay in one of the proprietary or other funds, it's best to try to have them to pay for it themselves as opposed to accessing the general fund, because you can't use funds from those other funds to subsidize things in the general fund. You can go the other way. It's just bad practice to pull it, to take the general fund and do it that way. So, but to answer your question, is it legal to do that? Yes, it is legal to do that. Is it appropriate to do that? Not in my opinion.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to rope things back to the motion that has been made. What we're discussing here is whether or not to table this ordinance until such time as it's deemed necessary to remove it from the table. So what I'd like to do is call for a roll call vote to table or not this ordinance. So if you are in favor of tabling the ordinance, it would be an aye, and if not, it'd be a nay. So I'd like to call.
Question from the audience?
No, not now. I'm going through this.
Well, yeah, but I think afterwards you give the audience a chance to speak before you.
This motion is to table an ordinance. Really, all this discussion about whether or not it's great or not, or what we should do with the money, really is not pertinent to the motion, whether or not to table the ordinance.
Well, if you delay it and table it, doesn't it delay paying the $90,000 to work up? So I think it is an important thing, and I thought that was just part of the process. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just thought that was what we do every council meeting that I've been to
Well,
the past several years.
Not on a tabling motion, okay? If this was a motion to approve this ordinance, then fine, we have the whole, talk all you want. Great, but I'm just trying to follow parliamentary procedure, that's all.
Last question, please.
Thank you. Okay, going back, roll call vote. Member Spielness.
Nay.
Member Wood.
Nay.
Member Swank.
Yes.
Member Reisner. To table, yes.
Member McCary is saying nay, no table.
Member Clodfelter is saying nay.
Member Thomas saying nay.
All right. The motion has been defeated. So we will proceed on with any further discussion about this.
Do we need further discussion?
No.
No?
I think we only didn't hit the audience, right?
Now we can have the audience.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
That was the proper process. Paul Hillard, Morris Avenue, just a quick question. The email that you read by Hecht, the third paragraph, the language used said future appropriations. It was to my understanding that the money had already been appropriated. So what she's suggesting is future appropriations to come out of the general fund where this has already been appropriated. So this is past tense.
No, what she said was, and budgeted non-operating expenses.
Okay, so does that cover under that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's already
Thank you.
budgeted,
Yeah,
so it is in the past tense.
Oh,
yeah.
so it's already budgeted and it's already appropriated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
It's just not spent.
So,
We have another.
one issue, before we go back to the public, that I have with this is the bottom half of this email.
We're not.
No.
The back and forth.
The procedure is members of council, administration, and then the audience.
And we have an audience member waiting to speak.
We're not done up here. We're not done up here. One of the things that bothers me from this email, or concerns me, I shouldn't say bothers me, concerns me this email, is the unexpected expenses. I have a very, very good friend who still budgets on the envelope system. And if you're not familiar with the envelope system, you lay aside either literally in envelopes or in piles or whatever, money for the things you budget for the year. And one of those things might be a vacation. But before that vacation takes place, you have an unexpected expense. Maybe your child has an accident and not all of it's covered by insurance. Maybe like they had in Xenia in 1974, tornado comes through your neighborhood. Maybe there's an unexpected death and you have funeral expenses. You still go on vacation? Probably not. You may have to borrow from that envelope. And even though we've appropriated the $90,000, we may have to borrow from that envelope. I mean, we have, at a previous executive session, a discussion about threatened litigation. What happens if we get sued and lose? We're going to need an envelope to borrow that from. And $90,000 is a lot of money. We can either get into this now or we can get into it at second reading. But there's a lot more to this that the public doesn't know. And I think there are ways that perhaps that $90,000 that we're being asked to give isn't really needed. So I guess, Mr. Chair, do we get into this now or do we do it at second reading?
I prefer second reading.
So we'll have a new chair. I agree. We'll do the second reading.
Mr. Dulac?
I'm Rob Dulac, live on Morris Avenue here in the city. Thank you for letting me speak. I'd like to commend council for not tabling, because tabling it would have done the opposite of what Councilmember Swank wanted to do, which apparently was discuss it further. Tabling would have cut off discussion, and it would have been to maybe back table discussion or something somewhere else, somebody be talking about it. But now we're talking about it still here in council, which is what needs to happen, I think. I do think it's interesting that the mayor's pointed out that passing this would only authorize him until the time came when it made sense, when it's legally okay for him to do that. Maybe there's other stipulations could be put in here as well that would make sense to say, not just when we meet 7.5%, maybe it's when we meet 9%. I assume council could do that. So that makes a lot more sense than killing this or tabling it. I think it's good to follow this through, figure out how this should be done right, and then set those stipulations when you pass the ordinance. I think it makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, we cut off discussion here, table it, and then who knows when it's going to come back up. We have a tobacco licensing ordinance that was tabled last year, you might recall. And where's the discussion about that? Zero. There's been no discussion. And it's now April. 5 months later, no discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Announcements and other business. We need a motion to accept the March 2024 financial report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the March financial report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Accept March 2024 credit card transactions. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of accepting the March 2024 credit card transactions signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Okay. It's been accepted. Appointment to Community Relations Commission. I don't have any information on that. Is there a member here who does, or is it the administration? Now I've been given information. It's always good to have it. Let's see, let me read this first. So we have what, one or two?
Yes, one.
Okay,
Jewel, good.
okay,
This is her line.
very well. We have a candidate for the appointment of the Community Relations Commission, Julie Goodman. Her CV here seems rather extensive. I don't know if is there one on the drive? Have you seen it?
I'll be happy to give an abbreviated version.
Okay. Is there any discussion about this appointment? Member McCary?
Thanks, President Pro Tem Reisner. I serve as council's liaison to our Athens Community Relations Commission and recently mentioned that it does have a couple of vacancies on it. So if we are so lucky as to have Julie Goodman join the Athens Community Relations Commission. Julie is the executive director of Hillel, and in the short time that Julie's even lived in Athens has impressed me with the amount of engagement that Julie's had in events and both hosting and attending. So I've attended a few different meetings of the Athens Community Relations Commission where Julie's been present and made helpful contributions, and I'd encourage council to accept this additional member.
Is that a motion?
I move that we accept Julie Goodman to the Athens Community Relations Commission for an appointment.
Second.
Ooh, tied.
Oh, we got lots of seconds. Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept Julie Goodman for appointment to the Community Relations Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and she is appointed. Now we have opportunities for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda. Is there anyone here who cares to speak? Mary?
Mary Abel, 48 Strathmore, Athens. I have been very interested in discussions over the last few weeks, particularly regarding the financial status of the city. And it has been and is a really very serious concern to me. You read some statements from the auditor. I'm going to go one step further, and I don't think that there would be disagreement with this with people who have been interested in finances. If expenditures in a general fund are depleted, what options do you have? The option this city has would be to cut services to the people who live in the city. And that's something that I don't care to see happen. I hope council doesn't care to see that happen. And I know most of the people that I talk to in the city don't want to see it happen either. Well, what are some of those concerns? We've kind of talked about them over various things, but I made a little list that is my little list of some financial concerns. One is a lawsuit over the plastic bag ordinance, cost of that unknown. Financial issue regarding the damage at the Quidel facility, cost unknown. A freeze on staffing positions, a transfer of $300,000 from the general fund to the medical fund. You've had a very strong lobbying effort from people in the city and outside the city regarding the establishment of a COG, but in those presentations, I haven't heard much about what does a COG cost. And in my research, a COG does cost money. There are membership fees that the entities have to pay. There's usually an executive director. There's usually support staff for a COG. There's sometimes an accountant. There's office equipment, technology, all of those things that have to run a COG. There's also a national COG membership, so maybe that's another cost. And yes, there are grants that COGs often get, but sometimes there is a requirement of local match that goes into those funds as well. And there is no guarantee with the COG that you're actually going to have lower prices. As the HRC director said, and I quote, "The COG revenue would depend upon the number of clients and the costs would be raised or reduced." Now, the major number of stockholders in this COG discussion so far are the city residents, your constituents. Mayor Patterson mentioned last week about having a weighted representation. Yes, you can certainly have a weighted representation in the development and formation of a COG. If you research that, many cities have that. And I'm going to urge the mayor to continue to push for that because it is the number of people in Athens who are going to be in that stockholder group. And in my opinion, I don't think we should acquiesce to anything less than that. The other thing is, you brought up Bailey's Trail tonight, $90,000 coming out of the general fund. And there's been discussions as to what Bailey's has done for recreation and travel and tourism here. And the city has been putting monies into that fund for some time. I would only ask that you provide some data to the taxpayers and to those of us out here. What are we getting for the money that we put into that? Now, I know it takes a long time to develop those kind of things, but I've listened to the testimony and the discussion, and I think that we need to have some data so that we can show, has this really been a benefit to the economic development and to the city treasurer? The other thing is that on some of these cases, you may need to have outside legal counsel to assist. And once again, the cost of that is unknown. So as you talk about these things in debate, I know you're concerned, and I am too. I just want everything to be transparent so that the people and the viewers out there know what are the issues before us. I think there are some people who think that, Athens has to be the savior of everything or the cash cow. We're at a point where that really isn't the possibility. And should we reach that point, the city reach that point where those funds are depleted, the only alternative is once those funds are really cut and there are no services, I suppose you could go and ask for a city tax increase, but I'll tell you, I do not think that the appetite out there is very much in favor of that. And so I just want to encourage you that there are a lot of financial concerns that I think I and maybe other members of the public have. I think the auditor has been very clear in what the status of that is. And I just ask you to really think about that as you continue to deliberate and make decisions of monies coming out of the general fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. At this point, we usually would have an adjournment, but we're going to go into executive session. And just We don't have any students here to ask us about journalism questions. What I will do is I will make a motion to go into executive session. That means everybody that's out there in the audience will have to leave, and only those people that I name will stay for the session. Once the session is concluded, the doors will be opened, and if there's anybody standing in the hall that has anything to say to us before we adjourn, they're welcome to come back in. So I'll give you all a few minutes to go, and then I will make the motion.
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
And if anyone needs a break, now's the time.
This better not be long. I need some water.
Pretty far from your seat. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Thank you very much.
Can we go take the executive session?
Do we have to close the door?
I believe so.
Yeah, we do.
Motion,
You make the motion
to go
first,
into
and then you
executive
close the
session.
door.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to sit down?
Oh, I was going to close the door.
No.
You gotta make the motion
Wait,
first.
sorry, I have to sit down.
Yeah, you had to sit down.
Yeah.
Need a remote.
Yeah, it's a rule.
Okay,
Yeah. I just made it up.
whatever you need.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session for the discussion of land acquisition or purchase.
Second.
You have to find who you
I
want.
I haven't finished the motion.
Okay.
With members Spionis, Wood, Swank, Reisner, McCary, Clodfelder, Thompson, the law director, the mayor, and the city service safety director, and our esteemed treasurer, Josh. So that is my motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of going into executive session signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay.
No, you have to have a roll call.
Roll call.
I thought I just did.
No,
No, you
No.
didn't.
no.
You named them, but you didn't
I'm
ask us to
sorry.
vote.
Okay.
All right.
Aye.
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 Aye.